Well, as the crises engulfing the world become ever more complicated and interconnected, Ukrainian intelligence officials say they believe Russia is about to send mercenaries from Africa to shore up Syrian government forces. The Ukrainians say the mercenaries will probably come from Russia's Africa Corps. That's a rebranded version of the state-funded Wagner Group. The Africa Corps has established a foothold across the continent, though exactly where its mercenaries are active and in what capacity, it's hard to ascertain. What is known is that they're heavily involved in northern and western Africa. Russian mercenaries are fighting in Libya's civil war, as well as propping up the anti-Western military juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. They're particularly influential in the Central African Republic, which signed a security pact with Russia in 2018. Well, Nigerian investigative journalist Philip Obaji has been exploring this shadowy world. Welcome to the studio, Philip. So, give us examples then of what Russian mercenaries are doing on the African continent.
Well, they are very active in a number of countries. In the Central African Republic, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and most recently in Niger. And for the Central African Republic, they have been helping the government fight against rebels that have sought to overtake the capital, Bangui, since 2016. And in Mali, they were invited by the current military junta to help fight against jihadist insurgents that are ravaging the northern part of the country. And then in Niger, we saw them only recently, just after the military took power in the country. So we are made to believe that the Russians in West Africa really want to secure the countries where they're involved in from being overridden by jihadist insurgents.
Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? That sounds like a good thing.
Well, it should be a good thing now if they're doing what they were actually sent there to do. But they've been involved in all manner of human rights abuses, disinformation, and they have been doing, the things that they ought not to be doing, especially when it comes to, being very aggressive towards the local population. So, yeah. All
right. Well, tell us more then about these human rights abuses. Let's start there. What evidence do you have, and what are people saying has happened?
Well, the most that we have seen in terms of Russian atrocities has been in the Central African Republic. That's if you're talking about sub-Saharan Africa. And this is a country that is so rich in gold and diamond resources. Sadly, much of this gold and diamond resources are in areas that are controlled by rebels. And when the Russians were invited by President Touadéra in 2016 to at least come in and help shore the capital that was very close to being overtaken by rebels. When they came in, only Bangui was under government control. But the Russians had an agreement with the Central African government that they were going to have access to the gold and diamond mines in exchange for security. Problem was that these mines were not in areas where the government controlled. So for you to be able to take control of these mines, you have to fight. And that's why
fight the rebels.
You have to fight the rebels, yes.
Right, which is why they were there.
This is why they were there. And that's why we saw incidents of abuses, because the rebels are not going to sit down and let you fight them, easily and then take over these mines.
OK, so define abuse for me, because we're talking about a war. People are going to get killed. So what lines are being crossed?
So rape became a weapon of war.
Right.
So women, girls and boys became victims of war. Even as we speak, such kinds of abuses are still ongoing. And torture became another tool being used by the Russians to be able to get confessions out of local artisanal miners whom the Russians felt were working closely with the rebels. So we've seen cases of arbitrary arrest, extrajudicial killings, and as I said earlier, rape of vulnerable women.
And your evidence is what? Is testimony of people who've suffered?
Testimony of the people who have been victims. And I personally have spoken to dozens of girls and even boys who have told me exactly what they've suffered in the hands of these Russian paramilitaries. I also have been a victim of torture by the Russians.
Really?
Last December, I traveled to the Central African Republic to investigate the activities of the Wagner Group after the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the founder of the group. And what happened to me at the border between Cameroon and the Central African Republic, soldiers arrested me on the orders of these Russian paramilitaries. I was detained overnight, tortured, and then all my equipment, phone, computer, and camera were all confiscated.
This sounds like dangerous work. Why? And you go back?
I'm not going back anytime soon.
Okay. You've learned your lesson.
Yes, I have learned my lesson. But again, I have to stay alive to tell more stories, yeah.
Okay. What's in it for Russia? So we can see Russian mercenaries are there defending governments against rebels, propping up military juntas. Yep. In exchange for what? Well,
in the Central African Republic, in exchange for the gold mines, for the diamond mines.
Right.
In Mali, it's in exchange for pay. Like we're told that the government of Mali pays something in the region of about $10 million to the Russians. But there's also gold in the southern part of Mali, which the Russians have started to explore.
Right.
So that's what's going on.
We'll leave it there. And obviously, Russia needs this hard exchange as it's subject to lots of sanctions at the moment. Fascinating. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us, Philip. Investigative reporter Philip Obaji. Thank you.
My pleasure.